Welcome to Mycorrhiza? Or It's really hard to pronounce that one. It's Mycorrhiza. I think in one word. I don't know. It's a game inspired by Junji Ito's works and other such things in manga format. It looked pretty interesting, even if it's a visual novel, but it had a horror and it, it could be cool. Could be very interesting. Click on a door to start, though. I know there's like one door, but the rest are not available. It's just a demo. So let's see what they've got. Act 1 Pets. My eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt. But I failed. My whole body was heavy and my head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly and I realized that I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry and I had trouble keeping my eyes open, but I could tell that I had never seen this place before. Slowly my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What had happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged. As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused, and I could see the house in front of me. In fact, it was the only house on the street with its lights on. The dirty yellow glow shone through every single visible window. I felt some relief knowing that the tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I wouldn't mind some warmth either. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find the doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang out from within the house when I pressed it. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought, while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation or something? As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened? This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Was someone out here? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I didn't want to find out what that was. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt since I was trespassing into a stranger's home, but I'd rather face a police questioning than wander around a strange neighborhood in the middle of the night. Hello, is anyone here? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured further down the front hall. Perhaps I could find a telephone. I stopped in front of one of the doors. A dim yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. Then the next one. Also locked. They all seemed to be. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? It gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at every end of the hallway was the only one that I hadn't tried. Well, the door at the very end of the hall was the only one that I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again my body tensed up, while my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping towards me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner waiting for its chance to strike. My hands shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized that I seemed to be safe. I felt almost silly getting scared of nothing. A quick search yielded nothing but barren, dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely, a wave of fatigue washed over me. The more I looked at the bed, the more tempting it became. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. Like a worm worming its way into an apple, a single thought slowly appeared in my mind. I had to sleep. That was soon the only thing I could think of as my consciousness faded. I had to sleep. The world turned dark and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper and deeper into the black abyss. Some people have gotten as little as a couple of hours of sleep the last couple of nights. Let's hope that this will all be over soon. I shot awake. It was as if no time had passed. I hardly remembered falling asleep. Feeling a bit better, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help, now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors just in case. They were still locked. I would have at least liked to take a shower. I smelled my clothes, and they had indeed started to smell slightly sour. Oh. It would have been nice to access the kitchen as well, although it was doubtful there was much food here given the house's empty state. The place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the streets now that it was day, even if I was still missing my wallet. I left the house for the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem so bad anymore. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint. I made my way down the path until I heard the faint sound of a conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around a pedestrian area. There weren't too many of them, though, and as I looked around I got the feeling that it was a rather small town. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. It didn't matter, I could finally ask for help. "Excuse me, could you tell me where I am?" The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. "This is... Kajimeth. Kajimeth? Let's go with that." She looked uncomfortable talking to me, so I thanked her and let her be. Kajimeth. I had never heard of a town like that before. Where and how did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognize scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't have the slightest idea where to go? I took a deep breath to calm myself down. My next best bet would be to ask someone to allow me to make a call from their mobile phone. I approached an older man in a business suit. "Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up." His lips curled into a grimacing frown. "I'm sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry." I approached person after person, but even after what felt like several hours, I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through a side street, I heard two elderly women whispering to each other. I heard of some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying that they were attacked by someone or something. Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if it has anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days. I was so focused on the conversation that I almost ran into a girl. Waifu material? Also, do they have a shirt underneath their sweater that says noob or something? Maybe Hooters. I mumbled an apology until I realized that she had approached me on purpose. Hi. Hi. Just kidding. You need to call someone, right? She extended her hand and offered me the phone. How did you know? People have been talking about you. We've had some violent crimes here recently. Everyone is a little on edge. Maybe pets have been getting sick. Some say someone has been poisoning them. She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. Thank you, I won't take long. I took the phone and dialed a friend's number. The call didn't go through. I tried it again and the result was the same. Maybe his phone was turned off. I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, then my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure that I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection. It seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Maybe you'll have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you a lot. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her phone back and wandered off with a rushed farewell. Leaving that way may have been a bit rude, but I was too frustrated to care. I just wanted to look for another way to get in contact with someone I knew. And you could have just, said screw work and just begin living here with your new waifu that you bumped into. She's helpful, she's nice, she loaned her phone to you, man. Just go with it, man. Don't be scared, just accept destiny, you know? It occurred to me that I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, but she had already vanished. As I made my way through town, I could now definitely feel the tension in the air. The girl was right. Everyone was on edge. I'm gonna guess she is a cat person that can transform into a human being. I'm gonna throw that out there as a theory. While I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too big to be rats. I couldn't really make anything out other than an eerie glowing eye, or eyes. Maybe it was a cat's gang searching the trash for food. Apropos food? Apropos? I don't know what apropos is. Apropos food is. I was starving. I couldn't possibly just ask random people to feed me, and since my wallet was missing, I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Though there were oddly tempting looking plants growing nearby. That doesn't look tempting at all. It looks like something I'd see in a goddamn plant-related hentai. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. Also, I smell a skunk in real life. My window is open. Sometimes skunks do try to get into the garbage cans outside, but... yeah, I smell skunk. Damn. Maybe it's Pepe Le Pew after he got banned from from Walt Disney. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. Their strange appearance hypnotized me. That sounds like something usually plant creatures and hentais usually do. They usually have hypnotism powers, don't they? Like they have some secretion that if you drink or they shove down your throat, you become brainwashed to become a fucking sex toy to the plant for all eternity. I don't know, or maybe I just randomly have seen really weird fucking hentai. But anyways, their strange appearance hypnotized me, and without me noticing, my feet inched closer. I've seen enough hentai to know where this is going. And closer. And closer. Don't! I broke away from the hypnotic pull of the plants. What was I thinking? It didn't matter how hungry I was. They may be poisonous. But my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knew how long it's been since I've eaten? Suddenly I collapsed and the world around me vanished. I heard that another team had some problems with a scientist of theirs who ended up being banned from their research center. Maybe I should have saved. She apparently performed experiments on humans who were... blanc. I can almost sympathize with her. I don't understand that gibberish. I'm not that character from goddamn Undertale. It was dark when I woke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up. I wonder if my yawn is contagious. But I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. It felt like the sniffing of an animal, perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier. I couldn't bring myself to look. It lost interest and walked past me towards the plants. I heard more to follow. As they padded into view, I noticed that something was off about them. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. They were smacking rather loudly and made unnaturally fleshy sounds. Every now and then, one would pause and give off a low growl that didn't at all sound like a cat, more like a slightly higher-pitched bear growl. After a while, the sounds diminished and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes that I heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake slightly. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralyzed, and if they had noticed I was still alive? Most house lights were still lit. I mustn't have been out for too long. Once again, my body gave off a deep growl. It was as if my stomach was eating itself. That is what they do, basically, yeah. They eat at your fat, and they growl and eat. Yes. I had to get some food, or else I was in danger of collapsing again. Being as desperate as I was, I approached the next best house and knocked. We gotta find the waifu. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Sus. I don't trust her. She looks too wholesome. And when they look wholesome at first appearance, then they are a problem. Hi there, come on in. How nice of you to visit. Do we know each other? Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. At first glance she seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical, as if they had been practiced over and over. She took another more thorough look at me and seemed to realize that we did in fact not know each other. Ah, you must be the new neighbor. I'm pretty much a homeless person, but sure, please come in. She disappeared before I could correct her. I hesitantly followed her inside. Sus. On my way in, I saw a food bowl near the entrance with some of the strange-looking plants I had seen earlier in it. Huh, she'd been feeding those to her pet. I peeked after the woman into the living room. A man leapt to his feet as he saw me and stretched his big hand out to me. His other arm hung down limply. Apparently he wasn't able to move it. Hi there, it's nice to meet you. How are you doing? He reciprocated his firm handshake, and he cheerfully gestured me to take a seat beside him. Ah, to my surprise, the girl who had helped me earlier was here as well. She gave me a small wave. It's starting to feel like a festivity. We should have a neighborhood get-together like these more often. Oh, right, this is... She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember a name she hadn't asked me for. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think, so I thought we should invite him in, and... Wait, as well? Did she invite the girl, or is that her daughter? Certainly, it is nice to meet you. No, I'm not really... Oh, right, food. Give me a second. The woman rushed into the kitchen and came out with a steaming dish of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes, and more. My stomach gave off a deep growl and my mouth began to water. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food on their plates, and I followed suit. As I devoured it and life came back to my body, I left my eyes to wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be rather tense, especially the woman and the man. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and then, they threw glances at each other's way, glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. The woman seemed to be especially eyeing the cup that the man was drinking out of. Every now and then, they'd notice each other's looks, and they'd put on a fake smile. The girl seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she just dragged into it just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of its scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, would you mind if I used your phone? The woman tisked. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She looked over to the man. Maybe he can use yours. Of course, I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. I gave off a sigh of relief and thanked the man. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please excuse me for one moment, though. I see he has to go to the shitter. He shuffled out of the room, presumably towards the bathroom. Alright, I'll make some more tea. She scooped up the man's cup and left me alone with the girl. I cleared my throat and nodded in her direction. Thank you again for lending me your phone. I did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you'll have more luck with the landline. I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird-smelling stranger. I'm going to go wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander around the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds, pictures of nature, as well as more abstract drawings. A fancy-looking framed piece and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath them caught my eye. The former seemed to be an art degree, and the latter a picture of the man and woman when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. Both had a genuine smile on their face. It seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Hey. Whoa! Wow, you fucking startled me. Wow. Did she sneak up behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. It'd probably be good if you check it out just in case she hurt herself. She was likely referring to the woman who had invited me in. You did? She's been gone for quite a while. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. I felt her eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I swallowed back my nerves and carefully crept down the steps. Maybe I should have called out to the woman, but something told me not to. I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw the woman kneeling by lamplight in front of a large cage. A basket of the strange plants sat beside her. There, it's all right. Take a good sniff of the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing one too. Everyone is. Everyone wants to get rid of the competition. We need to hurry. She held the man's cup to the bar. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quietly as I could. There you are, all ready to go. Upon hearing the man's loud voice, I jumped a bit. What I had seen in the basement made me a bit anxious. I took a quick look around and saw that the girl was already gone. Sure, I'm ready. Leaving already, I just made some more tea. I turned to see the woman standing in the living room entrance with a put-on smile. Ah, sorry, dear. I'm just not young enough to stay out late like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out into the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I had seen was still nagging on my mind. The man might be in danger. I had to tell him. I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I, myself, wasn't sure what I had seen? But I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset at the woman as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around at someone's house. Who invited you over? I was left perplexed. What just happened? I thought I was warning him, but instead I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed, and he gave me his usual smile. He seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. I couldn't blame him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. You need not worry. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. They couldn't have left so suddenly in just half a day, could they? An uneasy feeling started to fester inside of me. Here we are. We stopped before a house that looked much like every other house in the town. He stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing behind him. Come on in, no need to be shy. Do you want something to drink? Yeah, no. I don't trust any of your liquids. I don't trust anything that is in liquid form anymore. The man hesitantly grunted and let me down the hallway. I only wanted to use the phone and get out. All the weirdness of the day had me on edge. But what if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair. And the phone call would probably be what would topple me in either direction. Alright, here you are. The phone was one of those old-fashioned ones that had a cord attached to the receiver. At least it had buttons instead of a rotary dial. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Huh, let me see. He took the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. He let out a disappointed sigh. Not again. Those damn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll go take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. In case you get thirsty. He fetched a small bottle of soda from the kitchen, gave it to me, and went to the basement. It seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite soon. Once I held a drink in my hand, I started to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. I'll take a look around. Check the pictures. I took a look at the pictures hanging in the wall. There weren't too many, but he seemed to be pretty cheerful in all of them. Especially the ones with his dog. For some reason I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. Check the study. Entering the man's study felt like I was crossing a line. After all, he had invited me to his home and he was trying to help me, but my curiosity overwhelmed me. I wondered what that thing in the woman's basement was, and maybe I could find answers here. I took a look at the table to see what he was working on. I flipped over a picture frame and an open journal grabbed my attention. I decided to take a Weird. Heard a dog barking outside. I decided to take a sneak peek at the picture and was surprised to find a photograph of the woman and the man. They looked older than in the picture that I had seen in the woman's place, but they still seemed to be good friends in this one. It depicted them in a park as if they were having a picnic. A canvas was set up nearby. Why was it lying around face down? Perhaps he just hadn't had the time to hang it up yet. I turned my attention to the journal. His writing was messy, but I could probably decipher it with some effort. What should I do? No, don't take the... Shit. Maybe just read. I shouldn't just take someone's journal like that. Reading it was bad enough, but it was the lesser evil. I have a feeling that most of the others have found out what the plants can be used for. They must be developing their own pets in secret. Figures it wouldn't go smoothly. I'll have to keep growing my own and hope that I'm faster than they are. I should be good as long as I avoid leaving anything of mine at someone's place. They can only go after me if I have my scent. That teacup. He already broke his own fucking rule that he wrote in his own journal, really? It's too bad they die after just one use. I set the journal back down. Now that I knew he was a fantasy writer... Fantasy. Okay. That's the only way I could explain what this was about, especially the terrifying sketches that accompanied the text were something straight out of a horror fiction. With doubts gnawing at my mind, I made my way back to the telephone. Alright, it's all done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing you didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. He took the bottle I had drunk from earlier Of course, I didn't have a choice whether or not to drink or not, and left it through the hallway. I had an odd sense of déjà vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same that I had already tried on the girl's phone. Once again, they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that the numbers were correct. I tried all the numbers of my friends, family, even work colleagues that I could think of, until finally, yes, hello. It was a woman's voice that I didn't recognize. I was certain that I had dialed the number of one of my work colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. It might be best to talk to the man and see if he could help me out somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I could get back home. I crept down the hall. He went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could as I held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned a corner. It was just like before. The man knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, you have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. He will find the secret much faster than the others. No, we can't have him making something like you. Or you too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the what? You accidentally switched on the main light. What? Okay. The sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it. The man was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature. It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for it. It had features of a human, but I could also see elements that were distinctly dog-like. Its mouth was way too big, and the inside of it was filled with a seemingly random set of teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, the enormous eyes staring right back at me. The man fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while the thought was frantically running through my head. I had to get out. I had to get away from this demented town. With this thought clouding my mind, I hadn't realized that I had exited the town already. I was now on a big, grassy plain. Breathing heavily with fear flooding my mind, I had almost noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet, and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back to see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and, to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, but it seemed like the man wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing that it was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't be real. There was no way to explain what I had seen, and every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing. But I had seen it with my own 2 eyes. I continued on, at a slower pace this time, and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. After walking for what felt like hours, I caught a glimpse of a town. It looked quite a bit bigger than the one I had just left. The concrete buildings looked like needles from the distance. I wasn't fully sure what I had felt that moment, but part of me was relieved about seeing some civilization and being able to look for help. Another part of me was still in shock over what I had just experienced, but I was too tired to try to remember, or to try to make sense of it. And so I pushed myself onward using the remaining strength I had left. Soon it's going to be over, was what I naively kept mumbling to myself as I dragged myself closer to the next nightmare. Hi, Game Director here. Thank you for trying out Mycorrhizas. I don't know if I'm even pronouncing it right. Mycorrhiza? Because I'm going to presume it's Mycorrhiza, but I think the H would be silent, so to speak. So I'm going to presume it's Mycorrhiza. This game has been in development for way longer than one would think, and I'm happy to finally share it with you. Whether you're a horror manga nerd or have never read one, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you picked up the dynamic audio implementation as well. As someone who's mainly been a composer and sound designer for visual novels, I made sure my expertise in that area to make this game's audio a bit more special. You might even notice a change in the title screen now that you've finished the first act, wink wink. If you'd like to help us, please consider sharing your opinion. Yeah, exclusive teasers, follow the Twitter there. If you're craving for some new horror manga, I can recommend checking out Horror Manga Rec. First door is open, I'll make sure the second will be open as soon as possible. Alright, but there's only the question of what would happen if I ate the plant. I'm kind of curious. And also I'm getting hungry. I ordered some sushi not long ago. It's kind of weird. It's like I feel hungry, but I also feel full. Does anyone else get that feeling when you're eating sushi? Like, I feel like my stomach is empty, but at the same time, I'm not. It's an annoying feeling. But alright. Unfortunately, since I didn't save, what I should... In these, you should definitely save before making a decision. So, I'll just go back and see what happens if I eat the plant. And the other thing would be, if I don't simply die from that decision, I'll see what is in the other person's room. What is it, the living room? Yeah, and I guess that's it. So I'll just see if I can skip. I'll also have to see if there's a skipping feature. Like, oh, yeah, like this. Hell yeah. Eat them. I couldn't really think while I was hungry, and who knew how long it's been since I've eaten, so it's probably either this or starving. I dug in. They didn't even taste that bad. Kind of grassy, but edible. Although it grew harder and harder to chew with every bite, something red dripped onto the ground. I soon realized that a liquid was coming out of my mouth. I couldn't tell if it was blood or the plant's juices. More started to pour out as I panicked and tried to figure out what was going on. While feeling around my mouth, I realized that it had become totally numb. Suddenly, a fleshy chunk fell into the red pool that had started to form before my feet. Was that my tongue? My vision became blurry and my stiff body hit the cold ground. It was dark when I woke up again. I could make out that I was still lying next to the plants. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My body was paralyzed. I felt a sudden sting traveling from my head to my feet, and the pain grew by the second. Something was happening to me. My hand. It was bending in weird ways. Not just my hand, my whole body. It was warping, but it seemed like it couldn't handle the transformation. My body writhed and snapped in two. Yeah, just... I mean, I'd like if he had drew the death, like what the character's body being mangled and writhed in either multiple drawings or one final drawing to see what it would look like out of curiosity. That's usually what I complain about in indie horrors that use art or image depictions of death or gruesome moments, is to draw whatever you can creatively, like every death, every twisted, mangled manner of pain and suffering and death needs to be drawn. But, yeah. Yeah, no. Take a look around. Check the living room. He's the only room over, surely he wouldn't mind. He said I should feel at home. After all, the living room was minimalistic and unimpressive. A TV stood in the corner, gathering dust. His bookshelf was well maintained, on the other hand. I looked over the books. He seemed pretty interested in biology. Maybe he was a teacher or even a researcher, just like myself. I'd love to chat with him about his field sometime once I get out of this mess. I chose a random book and opened it, and I quickly shut it to recheck the title. It seemed like I'd pulled out a fantasy book instead of a biology text. Evolutionary Development, a Practical Study Guide. That'd be a rather weird name for a fantasy novel, but the depictions on the pages confirmed it being fiction. The pages showed drawings of creatures I'd never seen before, accompanied by detailed graphs and diagrams. I guess this could be one of those fake science art pieces like what the Voynich manuscript is theorized to be. Yeah, something like that. I returned the book and went out into the hall. I'll check the study, and I'll take the book. Normally I wouldn't steal, but this couldn't be further from a normal situation. I had no idea when he'd come back and how much time I had to read it. As I picked up the book, something fell out. I was startled by the sound and froze. Slowly I picked it up and curiously took a look at it. This was a small key, possibly for a mailbox or a drawer. While wondering about where the key could fit, I suddenly heard steps. They were coming closer and closer. My heartbeat accelerated, and in panic I hastily put the key and the notebook in my pocket while quickly exiting the room. I'll skip ahead until I figure out what I can use those for, then. Alright, I'm gonna save here. Actually, I can't. Alright, fuck. Take a break, I guess. We have the choice now when we were running after getting the key to take a break. I should really take a quick break to make sure that I wouldn't collapse on the way. So I sat down for a bit and kept looking out for the monster. After catching my breath, I suddenly remembered the journal. Maybe this would be a good time to peek inside. What if I don't read it? It was too risky. I should keep moving. Hell knows what that monster would do to me if it found me. I continued on a slower time, and soon came to a small river. As I leapt, something fell from my pocket into the water. It was the man's journal. It was too late to retrieve it. It was quickly being carried away. For a split second, I considered going after it, but decided against it. It was nothing but scribbles of a madman anyways. At least that's what I'd hope. But I need to carry on. I need to find a way back home. Catacombs of a town. Perhaps the key would have just been extremely significant for... I found key 1. The key has to have a lot of significance for it to carry on into the next chapter. Alright, well, otherwise I'll just read the journal and, look how fast I can do this. It's amazing. Can I save it, though? No, I don't think saving. See, that sucks. But you don't need to save when you can just do this. What if I stay here and wait? I can't skip if it's new. Nah. Waiting doesn't do anything. We need that key in the journal. Alright, I'll take a break, and I'll read it. I installed a GPS chip on my dog and followed it around to see what was going on, just to discover it was eating one of those odd-looking plants. I tried to stop it, but it growled at me. Never had I seen it act that way before. There was nothing I could do but let it finish. I took one of those plants with me to study it. After just a day, I saw my dog had changed. It was a bit bigger, and its hair was falling out in great quantities. It also started to bark at me, seemingly for no reason. I tried a bit of the plant myself, hoping to see why I was so drawn to it, but I found the taste nearly unbearable. I thought I'd just heard a sound. I jerked my head around to see the source. There was nothing. It was just my imagination, or it was time to keep moving. Yes. I woke the next day to a piercing pain in my right arm. At first I was horrified to find what it was entirely bent out of shape, but something inside me suppressed my fear. I calmly stood to fix it. At first I thought about getting rid of it, but the pain had already subsided. I was able to flatten it by beating it with a hammer. I had lost all feeling in the limb by that point. What would people think if I went out with a bent arm? I began to look for my dog. The first thing I found were large animal footprints, much too large for its paws. The kitchen had been torn apart, and strange hair littered the whole house. Then I found it. Or at least something that was once my dog. I could still see the resemblance, but most of its hair had fallen out, and its jaw was dislocated. It began to growl as soon as it saw me. Shortly after, it jumped on me with no provocation. It was hard to keep off with just one hand, but its teeth had fallen out, making it nearly harmless. I managed to knock it out and lock it up in the basement. I had definitely heard something. I felt real uneasy about this, but I didn't want to stop reading. I felt so close to figuring out something crucial. We're probably going to die, but I mean, that's fine, because I already escaped and with the key, which is probably the best ending. Leave the town with key. The journal's lost, but... whatever. A little more couldn't hurt. I couldn't see any sign of the monster anywhere. I should be fine. Alright, where was I? I froze up. There was definitely something near me. And it was close. Way too close. I could almost feel its ragged breath on my skin. My heart was starting to race. My chest contracted to the point where I had difficulties breathing. Take a break. Read it. Yes. No. So the water... the journal would always be lost. But at the very least... that'd mean the key carries on to the next door, which is important. Well, either that or the key is for the door, but I don't think so. I'm going to assume the key is, since it continues the guy's adventure, it'll be something important for here for multiple choice and different endings. But either way, my voice is completely destroyed from all that reading, like 40 minutes of just pure non-stop reading, and barely any skipping, so that's a lot of reading, and I don't have any drinks to wet my throat, so that's just gonna have to be it. So I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, please leave a like, comment, hit that subscribe button, Big Buffalo Scarper, the notification down below for updates on my videos. Thank you for watching. Until the next time.